I always believed that a mother could sense when her child was lying, that no matter how many years passed, the bond between us could never rot. I was wrong. I didn't realize how far love could decay until I looked into my daughter's eyes and saw not concern, but calculation. It started subtly, as these things always do. A misplaced pill here, a faint confusion there. The mornings had begun to blur, soft around the edges. I'd wake up in my favorite armchair by the window, the light of afternoon already spilling through the curtains, wondering how I'd lost half the day. "You must have dozed off again, Mama," Laura would say with that careful smile, the one that didn't reach her eyes anymore. She moved back into the house after my fall. That was 6 months ago. She said it was only temporary, just until I recovered. But my bones healed faster than my mind could keep up with the changes she brought. The medicine cabinet, for instance, it used to be my little fortress. Every pill in its place, every label facing forward. Decades of habit. But now, she'd taken over, saying, "Don't worry, Mama, I'll handle it. You don't need to fuss." I should have been grateful. I tried to be. I told myself it was just love expressed differently. But every time she touched my things, I felt a strange tightening in my chest. My home didn't feel like mine anymore. "She'd repainted the kitchen brighter colors for your mood," she said, and replaced my lace curtains with those stiff beige ones that reminded me of hospital rooms. She even unplugged my old radio, saying it was too noisy. That radio had been my companion for years, whispering music and news when the nights got too long. Now silence filled the air, thick and cold. Then came the pills. The labels looked the same at first glance, same bottles, same names, but something felt off. The tablets were smaller, the colors a little different. They changed the supplier, she told me, her tone light, almost rehearsed. "Doctor approved it. Don't worry." And I wanted to believe her. I truly did, because believing her meant I could rest. It meant I could still see her as the little girl who used to bring me wildflowers from the garden. But the days that followed grew strange. My hands trembled more. My thoughts slipped away faster than before. I'd find myself staring at the wall, lost in a fog, unable to remember what day it was or what I'd just said. Once, I tried to make tea and forgot how to turn on the stove. Another time, I found my purse in the freezer. Laura laughed too loudly, too nervously. "Oh, Mama, you're getting silly in your old age." That laughter haunted me. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was low, hurried. "No, not yet," she said. "She's starting to forget things, though. It's working faster than I thought." My heart slammed against my ribs. I froze by the doorway, gripping the wall to keep steady. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. I wanted to burst in, demand to know who she was talking about, but I couldn't move. My tongue felt heavy, my body trembling with something between fear and disbelief. That night, she made me soup, my favorite chicken and rice with thyme. She spoon-fed me like I was a child again, humming softly. Her touch was gentle, her eyes warm, and I thought maybe I'd imagined everything. Maybe the pills, the confusion, the phone call, it was all just my aging mind playing tricks on me. But when I caught the faint metallic aftertaste on my tongue, I knew something wasn't right. I started pretending. Every morning, I'd take the pills she handed me, smile and swallow, or so she thought. I learned to hide them under my tongue, then slip them beneath the napkin when she turned her back. By evening, I'd flush them down the toilet. Within a week, the fog began to lift. The tremors lessened. My thoughts came sharper, clearer. But I kept pretending, because now I needed to find out why. Late one night, when the house was quiet and her bedroom door was closed, I crept to the kitchen. My knees cracked, my breath shallow, but determination kept me steady. I opened the medicine drawer. It was all neatly arranged bottles, boxes, syringes even. But tucked behind a row of vitamins was a small brown envelope. My name was written on it, in her handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were printed forms, bank documents, property papers, something about a power of attorney. My power of attorney, dated 2 months ago, with my shaky signature at the bottom. I don't remember signing anything. There were also notes lists of medications, dosages, scribbles like increase by 5 milligrams, and observe drowsiness, and at the very bottom a handwritten line that made my stomach drop. Once it's done, sell the house immediately. I couldn't breathe. My daughter, my only child, was planning something unspeakable, something cruel and calculated. I felt the room spin, the edges of my vision darkening. My fingers went numb, the paper slipping from my grasp. I caught the table just in time, stifling a cry. That's when I heard it, the soft creak of floorboards behind me. "Can't sleep, Mama?" Laura's voice floated through the darkness, gentle as silk but sharp underneath. I turned, the papers trembling in my hand. She stood there in her robe, her face half in shadow, her eyes watching me too calmly. "You shouldn't be up so late," she whispered. "You might fall again." For a long moment, we just stared at each other. My mind raced, heart pounding. I wanted to ask her why she was doing this, why she'd changed my medication, why she'd lied. But all I could manage was a whisper. "What have you done, Laura?" Her smile barely moved. "Only what's best for you, Mama," she said softly. "Now, please, let me take care of you." And just like that, she reached out and closed the drawer. Her hand brushed mine, cold and steady, as she gently took the papers away. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't close my eyes that night. The shadows in my room felt alive, moving, stretching, listening. Every creak of the house made my pulse race. I could still hear Laura's words echoing in my head, "Let me take care of you." Once, those words had meant comfort. Now, they sounded like a warning. I waited until I heard her door click shut, then her soft humming stopped. Only then did I allow my breath to come out in shudders. My hand gripped the blanket, my mind spinning faster than it had in years. The fog that had once dulled me was gone now, and in its place burned something else, clarity mixed with terror. Morning came too soon. Sunlight spilled through the beige curtains she'd hung, washing the room in a dull, lifeless glow. Laura knocked before opening the door, her usual tray in hand. "Morning, Mama," she sang softly. "Time for your pills." I smiled. "Or at least, I think I did." I had become quite good at pretending. I took the pills from her palm, watched her eyes follow as I placed them on my tongue, then swallowed with a sip of water. She waited, always waited. "Good," she said finally, and her lips curved into that smile I was beginning to hate. After breakfast, she helped me to the porch. "Fresh air will do you good," she said, settling me into the chair by the window where I used to sit with my knitting. She brought me tea, kissed my forehead, and went back inside. I waited until she was out of sight, then poured the tea into the flower pot beside me. The soil drank greedily, unaware it was swallowing my doubts with it. For days I kept up the act. I took her pills but never swallowed them. I ate the soup but left most untouched. I began to notice her schedule, the times she left, the phone calls she took, the way her tone changed when she thought I wasn't listening. There was a second voice sometimes, faint and male, on the other end of her calls. The tone was always hushed, urgent. One afternoon, when she said she was running errands, I went into her room. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out my thoughts. I half expected her to burst in at any second. The scent of lavender filled the air, her favorite, same as when she was a little girl. I found her handbag on the dresser. Inside were receipts, makeup, and a folded letter. It was from a law firm. The top line read, "Application for guardianship and control of assets, elder care provision." My name appeared below it. The date next Monday. A meeting. A court hearing. She was trying to have me declared mentally unfit. I sank onto her bed, the world tilting around me. I could almost hear my late husband's voice in my ear. "You always forgive too easily, Ruth." Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd been blind. I didn't cry then. I was too angry. I thought of every night she'd kissed my cheek and said, "Love you," every lie she'd whispered between soft lullabies of care. Love wasn't supposed to feel like poison. That night, I pretended to be weaker than ever. I let my voice tremble when she called my name, let my hand shake when I held my spoon. I needed her to believe her plan was working, because now I had one of my own. At midnight, when the house was asleep, I went to the old drawer under the stairs. It had always been my secret place. Inside, beneath yellowed letters and dusty photo albums, was my husband's old fountain pen and the key to the box he'd left me years ago. He used to say, "If you ever need to protect yourself, Ruth, use this." I never knew what he meant until now. I unlocked the box. Inside were our joint property papers, saving certificates, and most importantly the original will naming me sole owner of the house and accounts until my death. If Laura wanted to sell everything, she couldn't do it without me, unless she made me incapable of refusing. Suddenly, every strange look, every altered pill made sense. My daughter wasn't trying to help me live. She was trying to make me fade slowly, quietly, legally. The next morning, she acted sweet again. "You're looking tired, Mama," she said softly, brushing my hair. "Maybe I should call the doctor to adjust your dose." I forced a laugh. "You always take such good care of me, dear." She smiled, unaware that I saw through her now. Days passed in tense silence. I began keeping a small journal, hiding it under my pillow. I wrote down everything, the changes in my pills, her calls, the things she said when she thought I wasn't listening. If something happened to me, I wanted someone to find it. Then came the night of the storm. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder shaking the walls. Power flickered, plunging the house into darkness. I was sitting by my window, counting the seconds between lightning and thunder, when I heard footsteps, soft, careful, deliberate. The door creaked open. "Mama?" Her voice was a whisper. "Are you awake?" I didn't answer. I kept my eyes half closed, pretending to sleep. I heard the clink of a glass, the faint rustle of pills. Then her breath near my ear. "It'll be easier this way," she whispered. My heart froze. I opened my eyes and met hers in the dim light. Her face was pale, wet from rain or tears. I couldn't tell. The glass trembled in her hand. "You need to rest, Mama," she said, almost pleading. "You're in pain all the time. Let me help you." Something in her tone cracked like guilt or madness or both. I slapped the glass from her hand. It shattered on the floor, water and pills scattering like tiny white lies across the carpet. She gasped. "Mama." "Don't you dare call me that," I whispered. My voice shook, but not from weakness, from rage. "You've been feeding me poison." She stepped back, her lips trembling. You were just what?" I snapped. "Killing me slowly?" The thunder roared outside, a violent echo to my words. She turned away, covering her face. And then she said something that turned my blood to ice. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I did it for you." The storm howled, and somewhere in the house the power died completely. I stood there in darkness, her silhouette trembling before me. "What did you do, Laura?" I whispered again. And in the blackness between thunder and silence, she finally answered. Thunder swallowed her words, but not their shape. I could feel the syllables forming in the dark between us, a shape like smoke, like something that didn't want to be seen. For a heartbeat we were two animals caught in the same flash of lightning, me with my skin buzzing from fear, her with her shoulders bent like a child's. She wasn't looking at me as a nurse or a jailer then. She looked like my little girl who used to sleep on my chest and kick her feet when I sang. "Say it," I whispered. "If you did it for me, say it with the lights on." The power wavered back. Not fully, just a faint wash that turned the room into a palette of gray. Laura's face came into focus, eyes swollen, lips colorless. She knelt and began gathering the wet slivers of glass with her bare fingers, as if the mess mattered more than the truth. Her hands shook. "You'll cut yourself," I said, and I heard the tremor in my own voice like an old floorboard giving way. She didn't look up. I already did. Outside, the rain gentled into a steady hiss. Somewhere in the house, water dripped in a slow, maddening rhythm. The storm had no more thunder to give, just that long after sound, like breathing after a sob. "I wasn't poisoning you," she said at last. So quietly, I had to lean forward. "I was slowing you down. I was keeping you from digging." "Digging?" I repeated. The word felt dirty in my mouth. "Into what?" "Into before." She closed her eyes like it hurt to have them open. "Into the thing you try not to remember every time you make tea and stare out the window like you can pour the past into the sink. Heat climbed my throat, then dropped from it like a stone. "You're speaking nonsense. I wish I were." She stood, glass glittering on her palm, and emptied it into the metal bin. The sound was small and final. "You started waking up. You started writing things down, asking dates, calling people from numbers I'd hidden. You kept asking about a bottle I'd never seen. A blue one." She glanced at me, and her stare was a door I didn't want to open. "Mama, there was never a blue bottle in this house. Not then, not now." My knees loosened. A blue bottle. The word lifted a shape from the lake of my memory, slick and cold. I saw a kitchen, not this one, an older one with yellowed wallpaper that curled at the corners. I smelled that sharp medicinal mint I used to hate, and I saw my husband's hands setting something on the counter while I folded laundry. A bottle. Was it blue? Or did my memory color it that way because blue is how guilt tastes? "I changed your medication," she went on. Faster now, like she needed to outrun my silence. "Because when you're sharp, you go hunting, and when you hunt, you find. And if you find it, if you remember it, someone else will find you too. They're still out there. They still call." "The man on the phone," I whispered. She flinched. "He kept asking to speak with you. He said there were discrepancies. He said he had documents from years ago, from when Dad was alive, from the pharmacy. He said he has a copy of your signature on something you swore you never signed." She swallowed. "He said if we don't cooperate, he'll go to the police." The room cooled around my bones as if a window had opened inside my chest. I could hear the slow march of the dripping tap in the kitchen, and with each drip I traveled backward, down a set of stairs that didn't exist, through a hallway that did. My head felt heavy with a crown I hadn't earned. "Police," I said, and my voice split like a twig. "For what? What are you saying?" She looked at me like I was a mirror with a crack she recognized. "You don't remember. I remember everything that matters," I snapped, too quickly, and heard the lie. My life was long enough for whole rooms to go missing. Her gaze softened the way it always did when I insisted on things that hurt me. "The fall took more than your step, Mama. Even before that, you carried fog like other people carry handbags." She reached out and took my hand, careful, like she was lifting something breakable. "Let me show you the parts you can't hold." We moved through the dim, quiet house to the study, my husband's old room with the books stacked deep, the clock that ticked like a patient heartbeat. She opened the bottom drawer of his desk and pulled out a file I hadn't seen in years. Brown, frayed at the edges. I knew it by the smell before she set it down. Paper, dust, something floral from the sachets I'd used to hide in these drawers when I didn't want life to smell like wood and ink. She laid the contents on the desk like cards turned over in a game. I'd forgotten the rules too. Photocopies of prescriptions, refills signed in a hand that looked like mine on a day when I was rushing. A long-ago letter from a pharmacist with a tone too polite for the accusation it made, a hospital form with my husband's name, and a death certificate with a date that was both yesterday and a lifetime ago. My mouth filled with wool. "No," I said. But the clock ticked on, and paper doesn't lie. I reached for the letter and felt my fingers rake across a decade. Mrs. Harrington, as we discussed during your visit, we cannot continue to refill both the benzodiazepine and the opioid at the requested intervals without a physician's authorization. Beneath the letter, a carbon copy of a prescription I should not have had, a familiar loop in the R, a tilt in the T, my name, my traitorous, hurried hand from years when mornings were harder and nights refused to end, when pain had its own voice, and it sang through my husband's bones. The room tilted again. Your father was in pain. I heard myself say, half pleading, half drowning, they cut him off. The doctor was afraid. The epidemic this. The risk that. He was a good man. He never asked for more than sleep. Laura's face folded. Her grief was not new. I know he was good, she said. I know he cried when you weren't looking because he didn't want you to carry it too. But the signature, Mama, on the refill cycles, the dosage increases. 10 to 20, 20 to 30. The night he... She couldn't say it. Her mouth trembled and then pressed itself into a straight line. I got the call and ran home from college. You were in the hallway with his blanket, rocking like you could rock back time. You kept saying you only wanted him to sleep. The clock filled the silence that fell between us. My hands found each other like old friends and clutched. You think the rest wouldn't shape itself. To accuse me is to accuse 1,000 women whose crime is love. But love can be a knife if you hold it the wrong way. I don't think you hurt him, she said, and in her voice there was a kind of prayer. I think you tried to help, and the numbers got away from you. It happens. It happened to so many. But the man on the phone, he wasn't just a clerk. He's with an investigator now. They're going through old files, matching signatures, tracing orders. And it's not just about Dad anymore. It's about insurance. It's about fraud. It's about jail. The word crashed through me like cold water. She looked at the pills scattered on the wet carpet by the door, like tiny moons in puddled galaxies. If you were declared unfit, she said, the edges of her voice thinning, you couldn't be prosecuted, you couldn't be made to testify. They'd have to deal with me, and I would make it go away. If I sold the house, yes. If I used the money to settle, yes. I hate it, but I can live with them hating me. I can't live with them taking you. I stared at her. The logic unwound itself slowly, a terrible ribbon. She was building a cage so the wolves would leave me alone. She was drugging the bird because the sky had teeth. What about the doctor's appointment? The guardianship papers? The way you looked at me like I was a burden. Her eyes shone and didn't spill. I was playing a part for the people listening, the ones who check on elders when there are large transactions, who think daughters are thieves until proven otherwise. I gave them what they wanted to see, a girl overwhelmed, a mother already soft around the edges. It's ugly, I know. I hated myself every day. I wanted to stand and couldn't. My legs were winded from a sprint I'd run without moving. In my mind, I was back in that older kitchen, the kettle rattling, my husband's breath thin in the chair. Just a little more, he had said, and I had kissed his forehead and measured mercy into a spoon. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, ragged. Why didn't you say, Mama, the past is at the door? Her laugh was a small burst of despair. Because sometimes you remember and sometimes you don't, and the days you do remember break you in half, and the days you don't, you get angry and call me a liar. You hide your pills in napkins, and I find them floating in the toilet like boats with no captain. We can't keep rowing like this. I pressed my fingers to my eyes until stars blew behind my lids. When I dropped my hands, she was closer, waiting at the border of my small pride. She didn't cross until I nodded. Then she folded me into her, and I smelled the lavender she always loved, and something sour fear turned to sweat. I thought you wanted me gone, I said into her shoulder. I thought you wanted this house empty. I wanted the wolves fed before they ate our door, she said. If it takes the house, it takes the house. I can buy another table. I can rent a room. I cannot buy another you. We stayed like that until the drip in the kitchen found a rhythm that wasn't unkind. When she pulled away, the gray electricity deepened into a steady hum, as if the world was giving us permission to breathe. What do we do? I asked. It sounded simple and impossible at once. We tell the truth before it's told about us, she said. But on our terms, we find a lawyer who doesn't salivate when he hears the word settlement. We gather your medical records. We gather Dad's. We show the dips and spikes and the heartbreak between them. We show your journals for the last month, the ones that prove when you stopped taking what I gave you, your mind sharpened. They'll ask why I did it. She swallowed. I'll say it. I'll say I was afraid and I was wrong in how I tried to protect you. I gazed at the file on the desk, at the mean little loop of my own signature. Age had softened me, but it hadn't taken everything. My spine remembered what it was to stand. And the man on the phone? I'll call him back, she said, but not tonight. Her face hardened in a way that made me both proud and sad. Tonight we lock this house. We sleep. We flush whatever I shouldn't have given you. Tomorrow we meet Mr. Carmichael. From the firm on the letter? I asked. No. A muscle jumped in her cheek. Dad's friend. The one who always said you kept the neighbors' secrets and your own. He's old now. Good old. The kind that remembers the world before it got paid to forget. I nodded, though my mind had already run ahead. Back to Blue. Back to the kitchen where I'd been youngest last. I saw a bottle again. Was it blue, or just a trick of memory? Colors change underwater. Maybe I had been underwater for years, kicking, hair floating, the surface always somewhere else. I lifted my eyes to Laura and saw the small scar near her eyebrow from when she fell off her bike at 8, the thing I had whispered away with cookies and a damp cloth. I saw the woman. She was my jailer, my shield. Love can be two people pulling a blanket over each other and tearing it in half. All right, I said. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a bridge. Tomorrow. She squeezed my hand. Tomorrow, she echoed. We moved through the house like people who have learned a new map of an old place. We cleaned the spilled water. We swept the glass. We flushed the pills and watched the small white moons spin and vanish. We locked the doors. We checked the windows. We left the study light on, a lighthouse inside the house. Before we parted, she turned back to me with her jaw set and her eyes begging. One more thing, she said. If he calls tonight, don't answer. Who? The man. He won't give a name. He'll ask for you by the old house number." She hesitated. "He knows things only someone from inside would know. I don't think he's a stranger." "What do you mean, inside?" I asked. But she was already shaking her head. "I mean," she said, and now the gray light made her look like my mother for a second. "I think he was Dad's friend too, or he wanted to be. She left me at my door with that, and the house settled around us in the tired way old houses do. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, coat still around my shoulders, and stared at the phone like it was a snake sleeping. It rang once. I flinched so hard my bones clicked. Laura's room down the hall stayed silent. The second ring came slower, like a thought forming. On the third ring, I lifted the receiver and held my breath. I said nothing. "Ruth?" A man's voice, not young, not old, a voice that had learned to sound patient because it liked power too much to show its hunger. "It's time we finished what you started." I didn't speak. The receiver warmed against my ear, as if the phone itself knew secrets I did not. "You remember me," he said. "Blue bottle, back room. Your husband asleep while we talked about Mercy. The laugh on the line wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was familiar. Tell Laura she chose the wrong poison." The line clicked dead. The house breathed once, and then the night resumed as if nothing had happened at all. The receiver was still warm in my hand, long after the line went dead. I sat there, staring at it, feeling the hum of silence inside my ears. His voice had said my name the way people do when they've known you in another life. Familiar, intimate, dangerous. For a moment, I convinced myself it was a dream. Old people dream of the dead all the time, don't they? Maybe the storm, the shock, the talk of police, it all had seeped into my sleep. But then the phone light blinked red. One missed call. Unknown number. The fear I'd been trying to contain all evening slipped loose, curling around my ribs like cold vines. Whoever that man was, he knew too much. The blue bottle, my husband. The Mercy I'd tried to forget all of it. He wasn't guessing. He remembered. I didn't dare call back. I didn't even tell Laura. She had already spent too many nights carrying my sins on her back. If there was more to come, and there always is, I'd face it first. A mother's last duty, I suppose. Protect her child, even from the truth she deserves. Morning came like a mercy. The storm had passed, but the house felt damp, heavy, as if the walls had absorbed our secrets. Laura made coffee in silence. Her eyes were puffy, mine were too. We spoke little, as if words might summon what we'd left behind the night before. By noon, we were at Mr. Carmichael's office, a small, musty room that smelled of lemon polish and ink. He was an old friend of my late husband's, but older now, frailer. His white hair framed his face like fog. "Ruth Harrington," he said warmly, shaking my hand with fingers that trembled. "I thought I'd never see you again." He gestured for us to sit. Laura did all the talking at first about the documents, the threats, the man on the phone. Carmichael listened without interrupting, his brows knitting tighter with every word. When she finished, he turned to me. "You remember the year your husband passed?" I nodded slowly. It was winter. He'd been sick for months. My voice cracked. I was tired of seeing him suffer. He sighed, folding his hands. I handled some of his affairs back then, you know. After the funeral, a man came to me, your husband's colleague, Dr. Miles. He said your husband had been conducting private experiments with a new sedative compound, something that wasn't yet approved. He suspected someone might have taken samples home. My stomach turned. That's a lie, I whispered. John would never. I know, Carmichael interrupted gently, but the hospital needed a scapegoat. There was a missing vial, blue glass, unmarked. They buried the story quietly. No charges were filed, no headlines, no scandal. Just silence. Laura frowned. Then who was the man on the phone? Carmichael leaned back, eyes distant. If I had to guess, Dr. Miles, or someone tied to him. He was forced to resign, and he blamed your family for it. I heard he started his own clinic years later. Not reputable, more like a trap for desperate people. He might be trying to reopen old wounds for money or revenge. The name clawed at my memory. Miles, yes. There had been a man like that, tall, quiet, always standing too close during the hospital visits. He'd admired John's research, envied it maybe, but there was something else about him, something that had lingered like the scent of chemicals. What does he want from us? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Control, Carmichael said simply, and maybe the blue bottle, if it still exists. My mouth went dry. It doesn't. But as I said it, an image surfaced unbidden, me, kneeling in the old garden after the funeral, clutching something small and glassy under the moonlight. The soil was cold, my hands numb, but I buried it anyway beneath the roots of the white rose bush John had planted for our anniversary. I'd told myself it was a symbol, a way to lay the past to rest. Ruth? Laura's voice brought me back. You're shaking. I forced a smile. Just tired. Carmichael leaned forward, his eyes sharp despite the years. If he calls again, don't answer. Record everything. And Ruth, if you still have anything at all connected to that time, destroy it. People like Miles don't stop. They wait. We thanked him and left. But as we stepped outside, Laura caught my arm. Mama, she said quietly, do you still have the bottle? I couldn't lie to her anymore. Not after everything. I don't know, I whispered. I think I buried it years ago. Her face drained of color. Where? In the garden, under the white roses. That night neither of us ate. The air outside was cool, still wet from the storm. The garden shimmered faintly in the moonlight, the roses pale as ghosts. I hadn't stepped out there in years. The earth felt different under my feet, softer, as if it remembered. Laura fetched a small shovel. If he's coming for it, we'll get there first, she said. I watched her dig, her breaths short, her hair sticking to her face. I wanted to stop her, to tell her to leave it buried, but something deeper than reason held me there. Maybe some secrets must be unearthed before they bury you alive. After several minutes, her shovel struck something solid. A dull clink. She froze. I knelt beside her, brushing away the dirt with trembling fingers. There it was, the blue bottle. It wasn't large, just the size of a perfume vial, but it glowed faintly under the moon, the glass catching light like a jewel. The cork was still sealed, the liquid inside a murky amber. Laura whispered, "God, it's real." I reached out, touching it. The cold ran straight to my bones. "I told him I'd destroy it," I murmured. "But I couldn't. It was all I had left of him." And then, somewhere beyond the fence, a sound broke the night, a crunch of gravel, footsteps, slow, deliberate, drawing closer. Laura stiffened, eyes darting to the shadows. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. My heart was a drum. The sound came again, closer now. Then a low male voice, calm, measured, missus. "Harrington?" Laura grabbed my arm. "Inside, now." We ran toward the porch, but the figure had already stepped into the light. A man in a long coat, face half hidden under his hat. But even from a distance I knew the voice, Dr. Miles. "Ruth," he said softly, as though greeting an old friend. "You dug it up for me. How thoughtful." Laura moved in front of me like a shield. "You're trespassing," she snapped. "Leave before I call the police." He smiled a cold, patient smile. "You won't, because you know what's in that bottle. And you know it doesn't belong buried." The night air seemed to freeze between us. I could smell the roses, the damp soil, the faint chemical scent leaking from the cork. For years, I'd carried guilt like a secret illness. Now it stood before me with a human face. Dr. Miles took a step forward. "You owe me, Ruth, for the years I lost, for the life your husband took from me." And before I could speak, before I could even blink, Laura hurled the blue bottle across the yard. It shattered against the stone path, and a thick, bitter smoke rose into the air. Miles stumbled back, coughing, the night filled with the sharp, metallic scent of chemicals and regret. Laura grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the house. "Run, Mama," she cried. But as we reached the porch, I turned back, and through the swirling haze, I saw Miles still standing, still watching. His eyes glowed pale in the smoke. He smiled again. "This isn't over," he said. And then he vanished into the dark. The smoke lingered for hours. It wrapped around the garden like a curse, twisting into the branches, curling through the white roses until their petals turned gray. I stood at the window long after Laura had locked every door, watching the haze drift under the moonlight. It didn't rise or fade, it clung, stubborn and alive. By morning, the air inside the house tasted of metal. Laura tried to make breakfast, but the eggs turned my stomach. My throat felt raw, and every breath carried a faint sweetness, the kind that doesn't belong in air. She opened every window, turned on every fan, but the smell, his smell, stayed. Neither of us slept that night. Laura had dragged a chair near the door, clutching her phone. I stayed in the living room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like my late husband's study ink, cedar and loss. Every sound made me flinch. The ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, even the wind pressing against the glass. Because beneath all those ordinary noises, I could still hear something else, a faint whisper, steady as a heartbeat. You remember me. It wasn't in the air. It was in my head. I wanted to believe it was fear, or age, or guilt. But the longer I listened, the more it began to sound like him, my John. The same calm tone he used when reading poetry to me in the evenings, just before the pain came back. At sunrise, I found Laura in the kitchen, pale and glassy-eyed. Her phone was in her lap, the screen filled with missed calls from unknown numbers. "He's trying to get through," she said hoarsely. "I blocked one and 3 more appear. It's him, Mama. It's Miles." "No," I said quietly. "He's gone." She looked at me sharply. "You saw him. You saw him last night." "Yes," I whispered. "And that's exactly why I know he's gone." She didn't understand, not yet. How could she? The man we'd seen wasn't alive in the way you and I are alive. There was something hollow in him, something too still. I'd seen it before just once on John's last night, when he'd looked at me with glassy eyes and said, "Promise me you won't let them use it." I hadn't promised, I'd hesitated. And now, that hesitation had found its way back home. By noon, Laura decided to go to the police. "We'll report the trespassing," she said, already pulling on her coat. "We'll tell them about the man in the garden. Maybe they'll find something." I wanted to go with her, but she insisted I stay inside. "Lock the doors. Don't answer the phone. I'll be back soon." The house was too quiet after she left. The walls seemed to breathe. I sat by the window again, staring at the ruined roses, the ash-colored petals littering the ground. The soil was blackened, wet, almost oily. I remembered how cold that bottle had felt, how alive the glass had seemed in my hand. Whatever had been inside, it wasn't just medicine. The whisper came again. "You kept it too long, Ruth." I turned sharply, my heart thundering. The voice had come from behind me, or maybe from within. I pressed a trembling hand against my chest. "John?" I whispered. The silence that followed was heavy, patient. Then a slow creak, the sound of the back door. My breath caught. I knew I'd locked it. I'd checked twice. I rose, gripping the edge of the table for balance. "Laura?" No answer. The creak came again, louder this time. Then a soft tap, footsteps. I moved toward the kitchen, every nerve in my body screaming to turn back. The smell grew stronger, metal and roses, a scent like blood and water. When I reached the doorway, I froze. The back door was open, just slightly. The curtains fluttered inward, and on the floor, beside the threshold, lay a single white rose, perfect, untouched, clean. My hands began to shake. The roses outside had all burned. Every petal had turned gray, but this one was fresh, pure, as if someone had just plucked it. I heard movement in the hall behind me, the sound of a chair scraping across the floor. I turned, and there he was, John, or at least something wearing his shape. He stood by the living room window, the light cutting through him like mist. His face was soft, almost too soft, the way things look in half-dreams. His eyes were the same deep brown I'd loved for 40 years. His smile was gentle, too gentle." "You shouldn't have broken it," he said. "My knees nearly gave way. John?" He tilted his head, studying me like I was something fragile. "You buried my work, Ruth. You buried me." I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. "No, I buried the pain. I couldn't stand. You promised to protect it," he interrupted, his voice low, calm. "But you let her destroy it." "She saved us," I cried. "It was poisoning everything." His expression didn't change, but the air in the room shifted colder, sharper. "That formula could have saved lives. Miles stole it. I tried to stop him." "And you?" He stepped closer, the floorboards groaning under invisible weight. "You made sure no one ever found the truth." I stumbled back, trembling. "It wasn't meant to be used, John. It killed you." For the first time, his face flickered anger rippling beneath sorrow. "It wasn't the serum that killed me," he said. "It was you." The words hit me like a blow. He moved closer, his eyes dark now, the warmth gone. "You changed the dose. You wanted peace more than truth." "No," I whispered, clutching my chest. "I just wanted you to sleep. That's all I ever wanted." He reached out a hand. The air around it shimmered, faintly blue, like the glass of that cursed bottle. "Then sleep, Ruth," he said softly. Suddenly, the front door burst open. "Mama!" Laura's voice snapped the spell. The vision flickered like smoke and vanished. I collapsed against the wall, gasping. She ran to me, kneeling beside the chair. "What happened? You're pale as a ghost." I couldn't answer. My hands were cold, my heart still racing. I glanced toward the window, no sign of him. Just the wilted roses and the empty garden. Laura called the police anyway, her voice trembling as she spoke. They came, checked the locks, took statements, found nothing. No footprints in the mud, no evidence of intrusion. But when the officers left, one of them, a young man with tired eyes, lingered by the door. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "we've had reports from this area before. Strange calls, figures in gardens, people hearing voices after storms. You'd be surprised how often it happens after chemical exposure." He hesitated. "That smoke last night, do you have any left of it?" Laura shook her head. "We destroyed everything." He nodded slowly. "Good. Because whatever was in that bottle, it wasn't just a drug. It was an experimental compound, banned decades ago. Causes hallucinations, paranoia, sometimes lingering visions." He lowered his voice. "It was developed by a doctor, Miles." The room spun. "So it was real," I whispered. He met my eyes. "Real once, maybe. But whatever you saw tonight, it's not coming from outside, ma'am. It's what that stuff leaves behind." He tipped his hat and left. When the door closed, Laura and I stood in silence. The air still smelled faintly sweet. I turned toward the window again. The roses were gone. Every petal had fallen. And yet, under the morning sun, I could still see the faint shimmer of blue glass buried deep in the soil, like the earth refused to forget. Laura touched my shoulder gently. "It's over, Mama," she said, but I wasn't sure it was. Because when I looked down at my hands, I saw the faintest dusting of blue powder glowing under my skin, and somewhere, faint but certain, I heard John's voice again. You broke the promise. That night, I couldn't bring myself to turn off the lights. Every bulb in the house burned until the walls glowed like old parchment. Laura had finally fallen asleep on the couch, her hand still wrapped around mine, but my eyes refused to close. I sat in my chair by the window, watching the dark garden, waiting for a figure that might or might not come again. The blue shimmer under the soil pulsed faintly in the moonlight, as if breathing. I told myself it was just a trick of my tired eyes, but I knew better. I'd seen that same faint glow years ago, the night John first held the vial up to the lamp. A cure for pain, he'd said. A way to quiet the body, without dimming the mind. I'd believed him. I'd helped him measure doses, record effects, whisper to the glass like it was a miracle in waiting. And when the first test went wrong, when his heart began to slow, when his eyes fluttered between this world and the next, I had refused to see what I'd done. Now it was happening again, only slower. The house, the garden, even my thoughts, they all felt soaked in that same chemical hush. Just before dawn, I heard the faint sound of a car engine outside. My stomach tightened. I rose, careful not to wake Laura, and peeked through the curtain. A single black sedan sat across the road, engine idling. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out tall, in a dark coat. Even from that distance, I knew it wasn't Miles. His movements were too deliberate, too formal. He walked up our path and stopped at the fence, looking straight at the house. Then he lifted something small from his pocket and set it on the gate-post. I strained my eyes. It was another bottle, not blue this time, but clear, with a white label. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. He simply turned and walked back to the car, driving away without headlights. When I was sure he was gone, I went outside. The air was cold and heavy. The bottle waited on the gate like an accusation. The label read, "Miles Laboratories retained for evidence." Inside was a colorless liquid, half full. Beneath the printed text, someone had written in shaky pen, "1 drop equals 1 truth." My pulse hammered in my ears. I should have smashed it right there, but curiosity, the same poison that once drove John, tightened its hold on me. I carried it inside and set it on the table, next to the lamp. Laura stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Mama, what are you doing?" "Something was left for us," I said quietly. "By the gate." She blinked at the bottle, her expression turning from confusion to dread. "No," she whispered. "No more of this. It says it's evidence. Then we give it to the police. I wanted to agree, but the words 1 drop equals 1 truth burned in my head. There were so many things I still didn't understand. What had really happened in that lab? Why had Miles come back now, after so many years? And why did John's voice still live in the walls of this house? Before Laura could stop me, I uncorked the bottle. A sharp, sterile scent filled the air. My fingers trembled. "Mama, please," she started. But I touched one trembling fingertip to the rim, just barely wetting it, and pressed it to my tongue. The taste was metallic, bitter, and sweet all at once. The world tilted, the light flickered, bending, and suddenly I wasn't in my living room anymore. I was standing in the old hospital lab, white walls, stainless steel counters, the sound of distant thunder against the windows. John stood at the far end of the room, writing in his notebook. Miles was there too, younger, eyes bright with ambition. They were arguing, voices sharp. "It's not stable," John said. "The compound fractures under light exposure." Miles smiled. "That's because you diluted it. You're afraid of what it can do. I'm afraid of what it will do." I watched as John turned away, locking the blue bottle into a cabinet. Miles's hand twitched, almost reaching for it. Then he looked past John at me. Not the me in the memory, but me, standing in the vision. His gaze met mine as if he could see through time. "You see?" he whispered. "She's always been part of it." And then everything went white. I gasped, falling back into the present, the chair rattling beneath me. Laura caught me before I hit the floor. "What did you do?" she cried. I couldn't answer. My head swam, my vision pulsing. I saw flashes Miles's clinic, years later, shelves of vials, patients in beds. His voice saying, "They never knew it came from him." Then I saw him in our garden last night, holding the blue shards, smiling like a man who'd finally found his proof. He hadn't come for revenge. He'd come for continuation. The formula wasn't dead. It had just changed hands. Laura shook my shoulders. "Mama, talk to me." I looked at her, my eyes filling with tears. "It's not over," I whispered. "He's still using it. He's still making it. We have to stop him." "Miles?" "Yes, but we can't go to the police. They won't understand. We need to end it ourselves." Her mouth fell open. "You're not serious." "I am," I said, my voice steady now. "Your father's work began here. It should end here. We burn every trace, every file, every note, every piece of it. Then we tell the world what happened." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right, together." We spent the rest of the day gathering everything: papers from the study, files from the attic, even old photographs where the vial glowed faintly in John's hand. We piled them in the fireplace. When I struck the match, the flame hissed blue for a heartbeat, then turned gold. The house filled with the scent of ink, smoke, and closure. Laura stood beside me, her arm around my shoulder. "He'd be proud of you," she whispered. I wanted to believe her, but as the last page curled into ash, I saw a faint reflection in the glass of the mantel John's face, calm and sad, watching the fire. He didn't speak this time. He only smiled. Then the image faded with the smoke. Outside, the roses began to bloom again, white, clean, untouched by ash. For the first time in years, I felt peace. We left the house a month later, sold it quietly, moved to a smaller place by the sea. The nightmares faded. The calls stopped. The blue shimmer in my hands disappeared. But sometimes, at night, when I listen to the waves, I still hear John's voice, soft, distant, but no longer accusing. "You kept your promise this time," I whisper back. I did, and though I'll never know how much of it was real, or how much was the mind's cruel way of healing itself, one truth remains: love can save.